Shut up and sit down.
Good day, real estate investors. My name is Scott Lurie, and today we are joined live on the Hard Truths with Scott Lurie by Eric Cline. Eric Cline, I got the great pleasure to meet at the Hustle Harder event, which was 2 years ago. He came all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to partake in what was our first event. And I'm so grateful for the friendship I have been able to forge with Eric, his wife, his really cool cat son. They've got a phenomenal family. He's built a phenomenal business. He's building a phenomenal business, and he's a phenomenal guy. So, Eric Cline, welcome to the Hard Truths. Thanks for being with us today.
Appreciate it, my man, and good seeing you again. And it's always an honor when someone asks you to chop it up on their podcast. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're here. I remember filming our first podcast. It was actually in this room, and you were present at the time. And you know, I was a little new to podcasting, but I was also a little new to Eric and Tony. Tony is Eric's partner. And so, you know, I got a chance to meet these guys, and right away I said, wow, these guys are going to do something really amazing here. I knew it was coming. And so I'm a big supporter and follower of all of their social media, because what they put out there is amazing, and they're doing amazing things. Eric, you know, you've got a phenomenal story. I don't know how to explain it to anybody, but you know, Eric has seen dark days. Eric has been the naysayers of the world. Eric has been the ones that I would say the rejected part of our society for a very small period of time due to issues that he was able to overcome. And it's part of his story. It's part of his DNA. It's part of who makes Eric who Eric is. It makes him the dad he is today, the husband he is today. It makes Eric this amazing, well-rounded person. Eric, give me a little bit of background on who Eric Cline is. Let's take me back to where you want to start from, and then why don't you bring me into the Boca era at that point, and then we'll progress into North Carolina. So let me hear the story.
Appreciate it, man. And it's always weird to hear, still even today, when you hear people say good things about you. It's crazy, because 14 years ago, that was not the case with Eric Cline, with me. And I'll take it back as far as I think necessary, but from 13 to 28 years old, I was heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol. And it's not that I came from a messed up family. Like I came from a loving family. I mean, my dad had some alcohol problems. You know, my parents got divorced, and at a very young age, I was the middle child, and I didn't feel a part of my own damn family. For whatever reason it was, that's just how I felt internally. So the first time I ever took a sip of booze, blacked out, loved how I felt, and I numbed myself up until I was 28 years old.
Wow.
Got kicked out of high school, kicked out of all my parents' house, went to the Navy, got kicked out of the Navy. And at the age of 28 years old, I was living in downtown Chicago. I was a union carpenter. I've been blackballed from every company just because of my drug and alcohol abuse. It wasn't that I was a good worker, because every time I showed up sober, they loved me. It was how many times I showed up fucking just completely high off my rocker. And I remember my last day, 8 days of using, Scott. This is where it really, for me, was life or death. I had locked myself in a room, and I had $3,500 to my name. Not that I saved that money up, because I couldn't save a dollar. I manipulated the union to give me $3,500 out of my annuity. Okay. And because I was blackballed, I could not find a job. And for me, the money wasn't to pay rent, to pay a cell phone bill, none of that. It was to get the next fix. That's all it was for me. So for 8 days straight, I locked myself in a room, and the drug that brought me to my knees was crack cocaine. So I graduated from alcohol to weed to coke to heroin to you name it. But the ultimate drug that got me, and it got me good for about 6 years, was crack. And for 8 days, I was in this bedroom. I was renting from some college students, and the dope man would come to my back door like clockwork, and he would drop off a bag every hour, hour and a half for 8 days. So for 8 days, as hard as this is to believe, I did not sleep. The amount of drugs that I was putting into my system wouldn't allow me to go to bed. And for anybody, which there's probably not too many people listening that went 8 days without sleeping, you fucking hallucinate like you've never hallucinated before. And the very last day, I remember it, and every time I talk about it, it gives me chills. But because I never want to forget this day, is I heard helicopters show up, hovering above the house. I heard squad cars show up. Police dogs were outside. They kicked in the front door, and I heard the paramedics and police coming down the hallway of the home I was living in. And mind you, the guy that owned this house was a Chicago police officer.
Wow.
So so I heard them all coming down the hallway. My mother, my brother, both my brothers, my girlfriend at the time, they were coming down the hallway with them, screaming, crying. It was just absolute fucking chaos. And I was in a bedroom under the covers by myself in my underwear. And I was sweating bullets. And I heard my older brother was actually arguing with the paramedics. He's like, "Let me in the room. This is ridiculous." So they pinned him up against the wall. My mother was out there crying, saying, "You guys, he's dead. Just leave him be. He's dead. He's no longer with us." And then, so they got all my family members back, and the paramedics lifted up the stretcher, and I heard it. It was like, the sound it would make when they lift the stretcher up. And they cleared the whole hallway, and they said, "On 3, we're going to bust the door down." So I heard 1, 2. I fucking jumped up out of bed. I fucking hit the door open, and I was standing in a hallway by myself in my underwear. I hallucinated all of it. None of it was real.
Wow.
But that day is the day I finally decided to either I was going to die or I was going to go down a path and make some massive changes. And I got that day tattooed on my knuckles. It's August 9th of 2009. I've made some pretty serious changes in my life, man.
Well, I can tell you that story, I didn't think that was going to be the ending of the story, honestly. I was ready for you to tell me that something else happened, but I'm glad that all of that came together, and August 9th is obviously a big day. So thank you for the background. So listeners, whether you're in a hallucinogenic state of drug use, or if you're in a rut or depression, please understand that tomorrow there is a great day. You might have tattoos on your knuckles of a day of June 20th or June 21st or July 7th or July 20th. Who knows? Pick your day and pick your poison. Yeah. So thank you for that background. I know it's got to be sometimes hard to connect with who I was as an addicted crack user to where Eric Cline is today. But you've done some amazing stuff, and it's something to be incredibly proud of. But walk me through that next step. So you're there, you got to make some changes. Assume we're going to fast forward through the rehab and the stabilization of life. But tell me, we get to real estate. I mean, wholesaling. How does this even come to Eric Cline's mind? How do you know what you're doing? You tell me you're in a room in Boca Raton, Florida. To me, I've got to understand that I'm addicted to drugs to going to wholesaling. The nice part about our industry, right? The nice part about our industry is anybody can participate. This is a for-all, for-one industry. The question is, Eric, how did you get there, man? Walk me through this transition that you went from, you got sober, you got clean, now you're sitting somewhere, and how did real estate get to your mind? Why real estate? Why not truck driving? Why not working at 7-Eleven? Why real estate?
Yeah. Great question. So I'll got out of treatment, right? And I am literally tattooed from the neck down, all the way down to my finger. Like, so for me, when I got out, I had a hard time finding a job. Nobody would employ me. It's easy for a guy like me to walk on a job site with a hammer and a tool bag. They look at me and I fit right in with them. But for me, once I got down to South Florida, because I went from Chicago to South Florida, someone flew me down there to check myself into a treatment center. And when I got out, I couldn't find a job, but there was a guy from Brooklyn, New York that had a call center of 200 people on the phones. It was guys and girls just banging the phone. And I went in for an interview and he hired me. Long story short is that job has forever changed my life because my appearance didn't matter anymore. I could put a headset on my head. I could generate leads and I could be whoever I wanted to over a telephone. They didn't see the star in the middle of my neck and the tattoos on my knuckles. I could be talking to an old white woman and she doesn't think I just got out of the joint by the way I look.
Sure.
So,
and by the way, just as a commentary, you said you could be anybody you want to be, and the reality is, if you when you shedded all of this numbness of drugs and alcohol behind it, Eric Cline probably. Eric Cline is who he wants to be today, but it took him a long time to get there, which is really the great part. But you go back to, it changed your life. You're in a call center. You're in with a guy from Brooklyn. Guys and girls can be what they want. It really sounds like a wholesaling operation. You can pick up the phone and call a motivated seller through a lead and get him to sell you a home and make money on it. Wow, what a great transition. Keep talking.
Yeah. So worked at that establishment. This company wasn't actually a wholesale operation. It's
sure.
But the similarities are there because it's lead gen and sales. And that's what I'm getting to. I worked for this guy for almost a year and a half, 2 years, became his top sales guy. And it's not that I was the most talented, Scott. I took an insane work ethic, mixed it with a little bit of talent as I was making my way up in the ranks. And before I knew it, I cared more about this guy's company than he did. I was the first one to show up, last one to leave. And I saw a lot of flaws within the business. And before I knew it, I was like, I told my girlfriend at the time, now my beautiful wife, I was like, Shyla, I was like, I got this enough to where let's go do our own thing. And I took a stack of leads that I bought. I took a stack of leads and for a year and a half, pounded that stack of leads. And my wife and I built, in 9 years, we built the largest timeshare exit company in the United States. I was getting ready to exit that company, 51% of it for $54 million. I had over 150 team members on my team in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I lost it to a lawsuit for tortious interference and some other bullshit. But I'm trying to answer your question.
No, this is
How
good.
did I get into wholesaling? When I lost my last business due to very, very unfortunate circumstances, it was the big guy taking out the little guy. I was trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life. Like, in my eyes, I was like, damn, did I get really lucky on that last business and just take it to the moon? Or do I really have a skill set here I can apply to other verticals?
Eric, let me ask you a quick question before. So at the end of that culmination, so you take a business, you and Shyla build this timeshare exit company. After that culmination of the 9 years, were you broke? Were you fiscally sound? Were you living paycheck? Where were you in life at this point? Because I think it's really still an important part of this whole discussion is where was Eric Cline when he started wholesaling and where is Eric Cline going? And we're going to have that journey, but I'd like to understand, you build a business, you got the big behemoth that basically through some legal reaction or action takes you out of a business that's supposed to exit you at a $51 million valuation. There's a lot of money there. Where was Eric Cline at that day after 9 years? Yep.
So the peak of that business, Scott, between my wife and I, we were netting anywhere from 7 to 8 million a year.
Wow.
For a few years in that business. But I will say this, I went from being a complete degenerate drug addict to making millions and millions of dollars. And when you've never had millions and millions of dollars, you tend to go through a cycle where you spend recklessly.
Sure.
And I went through that phase. When I ended up settling the lawsuit, long story short is my wife and I settled the lawsuit for millions of dollars. When we settled that lawsuit, we still had we had millions of dollars in our bank account. So I didn't start from scratch, but I did lose a business that was generating a shit ton of cash for me. And at that time, when that revenue stream got shut off, I had a $7 million home in Fort Lauderdale, a $2 million home in Chicago, a $2 million home in the Keys, and I had every freaking toy and car you could think of. So, like, I went into panic mode of, shit, I got no income coming in. I just settled a lawsuit for almost, it was millions. I can't disclose how much it was.
Understood.
But, I was left with, just full transparency, I was left with $4 million in the bank.
Wow.
But I own fucking $11 million in homes for my own personal residence.
that math doesn't always work, but needless to say, I want to just go back to one part of the story, because before we go to the next part, which is how do you get to wholesaling, which we're eventually going to get to, folks. But it's important to understand that you have a hallucinogenic drug addict who realizes his time is his time, and he gets out of there, moves to South Florida for treatment, jumps into this guy's business, and after 9 years of making a significant amount of money and ups and downs, peaks and valleys, every car, every toy, everything you could ever dream of, real estate, wholesaling is Eric's next stop. And so thinking through this, you have a individual with an obsessive mission to be successful. He wanted to be something other than a drug addict, which all drug addicts want to be something other than drug addicts. They get lost in the drugs. And so we fast forward now to what is real estate. And you go from timeshares, there's a real estate component to timeshares, there's an exit component to it. You have really great lead gen and really great phone skill sets that you've established and motivation over the last 9 years. Where does this wholesaling even cross your mind? How does this happen?
Got it. I knew a guy that knew a guy that knew a guy.
Okay.
Scott, and they were like, Eric, your last business model is almost identical to this wholesaling model. So just to be very clear, I looked at the model for 6 months. I looked at it, but didn't do anything about it. It was that I almost didn't know if it was real. I was like, damn, I can get somebody out of a timeshare over the phone, but will somebody really sell me their house over a telephone, deeply, deeply discounted? That's a big task to ask somebody. So 6 months went by, and my wife was like, Eric, you got to go fucking do something. Enough sitting around the house, because I did go through a little bit of depression when I lost my business.
Sure.
And a day had come where the pain got great enough of me sitting around, and I'm like, F it, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do this wholesale model. Now, the day I got into it, I don't know anything about real estate. Nothing. I've never flipped a home. I've bought a few homes that I probably should not have even bought. But so for anybody out there that's thinking about it and says, well, I've never flipped a house, I don't know how to buy it. I don't either. I'm still 2 years later today trying to figure out the real estate vertical. When I got into wholesaling, I didn't look at it as real estate. I looked at it as lead gen and sales.
Say that again. Say that again for us. Just let's go through this one more time. You look at it as two components.
Yes, I did not for 1 second say I'm getting into the real estate industry. I said I'm going into another sales and marketing model, because I generate a lead of somebody that raised their hand and said, I want to sell. And then I got to get on the phone with that person, convert it to a contract. And then I flip the contract. Everyone asked me, what was your first deal like? It was just a transaction to me.
Right. So you said something that I want all of our listeners to really grasp. Eric most likely could care less that he's in the real estate industry. He doesn't view it as real estate today. Even today, he doesn't. He views it as, and I think you said lead gen was your first one. And then what was the second item?
Sales. Lead gen and sales.
Lead gen sales. That's it.
That's it.
Okay. So wholesalers, I mean, so knowing what I know about you and knowing what you know about yourself, lead gen is one very important piece of wholesaling, right? It's probably not the most important, but you want to get qualified leads of motivated sellers. That's important. If you find somebody, if you're on the other line with somebody, no matter how good of a salesperson you are, if they don't want to sell the house and don't have any motivation to sell the house, you can be the best salesperson in the world. It doesn't help you. Walk us through. No. So walk us through lead gen for a minute. Let's just talk at its core roots of lead gen, specifically on the real estate world. Walk me through, how are we getting to everyone asks me all the time, how do you get to the motivated seller? How do you find the motivated seller, Eric? What's going on?
Perfect. So when I came into this model, Scott, I wanted to think outside of the box because like I had a 9-year run. I had a little bit of business savviness to me. And I was like, all right, how can I go for the lowest hanging fruit, the person that's most likely to sell their home to me? So I did a couple different trial runs on different data sets, and I'm going to give everybody, all your listeners, basically my business in a box. And this is the data that we've been pulling for the last 2 years. We've done over $5 million in assignment fees in hundreds of deals. So I look at it. So we buy absentee owner data. The homeowner does not live in that house. Okay.
Great.
So I'm in Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. Those are my 4 markets. And I go in all of the major cities, and then I buy within an hour outside of those cities. And I've bought all of the absentee owner data. What I do when I buy the data is I exclude LLC and trustee owned properties because they're harder to skip trade. And then I keep the home value under 300 grand. And then I keep the equity between 20 to 100% equity in the property. So why are those data points? And then when I get that data, I send it over to a call center that's out of the United States. So the callers have a bit of an accent. And I'm going to tell you why I explain all of those little pieces I told you. So I want to get somebody it's easier to push a tenant out of a property than it is to pack up your wife and kids and get them out of a property, right? Yes. The answer is yes to that. And then I want to, more than likely, the tenant is on a month-to-month lease and they're paying below market rent. So their investment property more than likely is not even an investment to them. If I were to break down the numbers to 9 out of 10 of these homeowners that I speak to, they're in the hole on this house. If they've had to repair a roof and AC. So like when I can break that down to them, like, hey, your investment property actually is costing you money. Then I've sent the lead over to a call center that's overseas that has a accent. These cold callers have called these homeowners, and that homeowner has spent 3 to 5 minutes with somebody in another country that you know is in another country. They call them completely out of the blue, and they spent 3 to 5 minutes with them. That's motivation to me. And then the last point is I've excluded trustee and LLC owned properties. Any landlord that has rental properties in their personal name is an inexperienced landlord because they should have it in a company, not in their own personal name.
Wow. So Eric, okay.
That was a lot.
No, that was all really great stuff. And I want people to understand exactly what Eric is saying. We just touched on, Eric just gave us his entire business in a stone's throw So we're going to ask a couple questions, but Eric just gave us his entire business in essentially 5 minutes. He told us exactly what he pulls for the data set, which is data sets, which is non-owner occupied or absentee owners, but not in an LLC and not in a trust. It is a property that has $300,000 of value or under, and with equity of 20% or more, right? So take those pieces of it, and that's Eric's list in the 4 states that he operates in, right? Unbelievable business. And the reason that Eric is happily and comfortable telling you this information is that Eric, which we're going to discuss in a few minutes, but Eric has no problem kicking your butt in the sales call right after this. So that's why he can tell you this information. Why would Eric give us his trade secrets? Because Eric is the greatest salesperson ever. Eric, slide over for a minute. If I can just see something on your wall, can you just go like that? Eric is a sales goat. So thinking about this from a different standpoint, Eric will tell you all of the recipe, but when he shows up, he knows that he's going to kick your butt. It's the same reason why when Michael Jordan wants to go shoot a slam dunk, he knows he's going to make it 100% of the time, and that's why it's no big deal. Some guys are great, some guys are average, some are poor. Yep. So amazing. So as a potential real estate investor, Eric has broken down a couple different parameters that we can all search for on various different data sources. Where are you buying your list from? Where are you pulling your data from? I use the antiquated, what seems new to me, but antiquated to some people, which is PropStream. But what are you using?
So I've only ever pulled a lead from ListSource.
So Eric, listsource.com?
I believe, I would assume. My wife pulls all of our data. But
okay, I would assume Shyla pulls the data, and Eric thinks it's from knows it's from ListSource. But if you Google ListSource, Eric only buys data from ListSource. So Eric is buying data that you can go get. So Eric will happily tell you where it is. Go to listsource.com or whatever it is and put in all that data points, and you're going to get the same darn list. You have the same opportunity. You wake up tomorrow morning, you have the same opportunity that Eric Cline has at his firm. Everybody has the same opportunity in the world. So if you're lazy or if you're not at the point where you're ready to make the next investment, we can't really give you more data. Eric just unloaded it for you. Here you go. Here's all the recipes you've ever dreamt of and more. So Eric, so you get these lists, you send them over to the call center. You have somebody on the call center that's engaging with you, right? That the 3 to 5 minutes with an accented a call center person means to Eric that we have motivation. And the reason I think that's a really important piece, and I love that piece, because when I get a call from someone that's got an accent from over there, I'm like, click, and don't ever call again, and then they call back again, and I'm like, hey, why do you keep calling? And I get it. So you have a dialer, you have somebody dialing for dollars is what essentially is happening, and they're calling. Once they get a 3-minute conversation going with Mary Ann Smith, who owns 123 Main Street, that's $300,000, that owes only $150,000 in property value, owes $150,000 to the bank. Here's the sauce, guys. Okay, so what happens here is lead gen and sales. Remember, Eric first said this in the beginning. It's lead gen and sales. Lead gen and sales. Sales go lead gen and sales. That's the way it is. Get a motivated seller on the line for me. Let me lock them up, and let me swing for the home run. So walk us through a little bit, Eric, if you can. What happens? So tell us just the fundamental. I know it's going to sound fundamental to you or maybe rudimentary to you. After that person hangs up the 3 to 5 minute phone call, what happens? How does Eric Cline get on the phone? And folks, you can follow Eric's, which we're going to talk about at the end, but on his Instagram that they post, between him and Tony, they're showing you their calls. They're doing live calls. They're showing you real data. What happens, Eric, at that point when this person, so just fundamentally, I just hang up with the call center just hangs up with Mary Smith at 123 Main in Tallahassee, Florida. She's got $150,000 of equity and has indicated she's motivated. Walk us through the next step of this, because this is the sauce.
Perfect. So that lead then just gets submitted over to our office.
How does it come? Via email, phone, text?
We have a webhook form where they hit submit and it goes into our CRM. Got it. Which is our software that we use to house all of our data and be able to manage it, right?
And what CRM do you use, if you don't mind me asking?
Yep, it's my own. It's turnkey. I have my own proprietary software.
Okay, so can we, Peter? Can we grab that at the end just so we can flash it? Because I'd like to. So Eric has built out a CRM that is his proprietary CRM that you can buy from Eric as a CRM. I'm assuming you're selling it? Yes. Okay. Yep. So he has white labeled the CRM, which basically takes a lot of the nuances and makes it.
No. It is not white labeled. This is my proprietary software.
Even better. So Eric has built up for the last 9 years in one business and 2 years in another, a CRM that boasts everything you possibly need to be successful. You can buy this program. How much does it cost for the CRM a month? I'm assuming it's like $20,000 a month, right?
No, dude. It's a subscription base. It's $299 a month for up to 5 users.
Guys, wholesaler alert, real estate investor alert, $299 plus a list gets you in this business. Think about it. If you don't have these dollars, come talk to me. We'll figure that out. So Eric, so it comes in from a webhook into your CRM. Your CRM gets alert that we got a hot lead on the line, motivated seller in Tallahassee. Tell me now what goes on here, because this, to me, guys, really is the most important piece of it. This is what Eric built for 9 years from selling timeshares, and where we're going today with him getting someone to sell him a phone. Remember what the proposition is. Eric still doesn't believe this happens, just so you understand, that people will sell you their home over the phone.
Over the phone.
Yep. Let's do it.
So, before I ever made my first call, I said, this is a big task to ask of somebody. And I had a couple buddies that sent me some recordings, and I got to listen to their closers close. And I was like, all right, shit, that was the worst call I've ever heard. And someone said, yes, they would sell their house. So in my mind, Scott, with now almost 10 years of phone sales experience, and have creating my own 5-step sales process by this point, I knew my biggest hurdle when I got a homeowner on the phone was all of the competitors that got to him before I did. I knew that was my biggest hurdle, because you have a lot of people that get these sellers on the phone and they don't give two shits about them. They have a very, very small conversation. It's usually about money, and then they hang up on them. So I was like, how do I separate myself from the competition? When that homeowner says hello, they think I'm different. So the way that I did this was I had the cold callers, when they would hand a lead off to me, I had them wrap that phone call up by saying this. And anyone listening, it's all about being different. So when the cold callers would wrap a call up, they said, what we're going to do now, Mrs. Homeowner, is we're going to pair your property with the best buyer in your area that we think best suits your situation. So I don't use the word investor. I don't use the word cash buyer. We just use the word buyer. It's a little more subtle, and everybody is saying cash buyer. So I'm like, all right, when I would call that lead then, Scott, I would call it and I'd say, hey, John, this is Eric with TLC HomeBuyers. How are you doing today? It looks like your property was paired with us. They thought we would be a good fit for you. So I'm immediately saying, it looks like they actually paired you with my company. Not, I'm just calling you out of the blue. And then what I go into on every one of our phone calls, we have a 5-step sales process. The entire 5-step sales process is to see if the property even qualifies for us to put it into our portfolio. So we let them know in the very beginning, because if you've been in wholesaling long enough, or if you've made even a few phone calls, every homeowner thinks they have the hottest property in the neighborhood because everybody and their brother is calling them. And they're all trying to buy the house. So in my head, I'm like, how can I be different? And so I came up, I was like, I'm going to let the homeowner know that we might not actually buy the property. So I'm going to do a takeaway in the very beginning.
Well, I want to talk about two things there, because I think the sales, first of all, the sales angle that you use is remarkable, only because when the seller gets on the phone with you, you have a connection from the last call of, hey, they paired us. And that immediately brings one of the most important pieces of the sales cycle, which is trust and confidence, to the process. You're immediately walking in with a connection of, I'm not hanging up on them, I'm listening because I'm paired to them. And paired is a phenomenal connector that I think is great. I want to digress for 1 minute, which is to just say, all of you other wholesalers out there that are only talking about money to a potential seller, your close ratio has to be incredibly low, and you only are talking to someone about money when you're ready to close from a motivated seller that is either not buying deep enough, right? So you're not getting a discount to the level that you want to earn the $5 million in wholesale fees that you've earned, or you are setting the industry up for failure because you're never going to be able to wholesale the deal because there's not enough equity in the deal for someone else. And so you're going to leave this seller with a empty contract, essentially, is what happens. And that's not good.
Nope.
So talking through the sales cycle, Eric, I think it's pretty remarkable to understand that hallucinogenic day to your great run from timeshares to now managing the sales cycle. Would you agree that this is 100% about that initial phone call you connect with the seller on? Is everything based around that connection?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's cleaning up the mess, Scott, that the other 100 people did prior to me ever calling them.
Yeah, so walk us through a few of those stories, Eric. So someone says, "Oh, I'm TLC HomeBuyers," and they say, "Oh, good, John just called me from John's HomeBuyers, and Steve just called me. I got 100 of you guys calling me. What do you want? Like, you guys are bothering me."
Perfect, Scott. You know what? It's not the first time I hear that, and the hardest part about my job is actually those other 100 phone calls that you've got, because the reality of it is if you are serious about buying your house or selling your house, you wouldn't be on the phone with me right now if you weren't serious about selling your house. This is what I can promise you, Scott. This phone call isn't going to be like the other 10 phone calls that you got today. So this is what's going to happen on this phone call. I'm going to see whether or not your property even qualifies to be put into our portfolio. So one of two things will happen. I'm going to go through this call and I'm going to ask you some questions about the property that you've probably already answered before, but I can't buy the house without getting the answers to them. And by the end, I'm going to submit everything to my underwriters, and they're going to do one of two things. They're going to look at your property, evaluate it based off of all the information that you and I have discussed, and they'll tell me either, yes, it's been approved, here's the offer, or no, we've denied it, and here's the reason why. So by the end of this phone call, Scott, we're either going to buy your house, or I will personally put you on our do not call list, and you'll never hear from us again. Fair enough? And then he's going to say, yeah. Then what I'm going to do, Scott, is I'm going to say, quick, before we get too far into the nitty gritty about why you want to sell and what the condition is, do me a favor, grab a pen and paper real quick, because I want you to jot down all my contact information, and you're going to want to jot some notes down as we go throughout the conversation. So what am I doing in the very beginning? I'm taking control of the phone call. I'm getting the homeowner engaged, and I am putting my name front and center in front of them, and I'm actually having them write it down. Because you need to remember, when we're doing this over the phone, you're not walking into their home to where you're sitting at the kitchen table with them.
Right. There never is a handshake, right? You never get to actually connect with them from a handshake. So you're using a, hey, write down my name and number. I'll spell it for you on a piece of paper and take down some notes. You're using that as the handshake where you're creating that connection, that interpersonal connection.
Yeah, because what I see so many people do, Scott, and what you don't know, you don't know. If you get the wrong information, you get the wrong results, right? And it is what it is. So I was watching people in this industry. They would go through an entire pitch, which was only 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes, which is ridiculous in my opinion. And they would make an offer on a home, and then the homeowner would say, what's your name again?
Right.
They wouldn't even know who the hell they're selling the house to. So it's like, I know there's all of these obstacles and roadblocks that are going to come at the very end. It's like my 5-step sales process is intro, you do your fact find, then you talk about the house, then you make your offer, and then you close the deal. Step 5 is the close. The close should be the easiest part of the entire conversation, because by the time, if you've done everything right, by the time you get to the close and you've agreed on a number, you're now trying to close or sign a contract with somebody that likes you, trusts you, and wants to do business with you. So closing is not hard. All the work that has to be done up to the close is where people fail so much.
Sure. And Eric, I think that's amazing. From a wholesaler or a potential flipper looking for their own leads and people looking to buy distressed real estate, or find distressed sellers. All of that data is so important, because as you said, the close is just a fundamental process. I'm going to send you a contract. You're going to sign your name. I'm going to sign my name, and we have a closing pending in our future, right? And so
there we go.
Yeah. So walk me through a couple. So when I was wholesaling 20 years ago, we didn't have callers. We didn't have foreign accents. We had 3-ply contracts. I'd leave one of these for you at your front door. Thank you for your business was essentially the motives, was essentially the close for me. And I was always interpersonal. I was always shaking hands with somebody, which was one of my skill sets. How the piece of this that a lot of wholesalers lose sight of, that, which I think is the biggest piece of it, is how do you let them know that you're going to have other people that are going to want to see the house, that are going to be the actual buyers of the house. And that process, I think, is the art, right? I think that's the one where it's like, well, you're going to take my house and sell it to this guy, and you're going to make a profit. How did I get cut out of it? And that's $5 million of value to Eric Cline. How do we make that? Walk us through that a little bit, because a lot of wholesalers are very, they lack no confidence in this space. And so you get the quirky, the odd, the radar from the first seller goes way up, and you get into this crazy predicament. Walk me through that if you can.
Yeah. So when we're wrapping it up, once we've agreed on a price, right, and we're going through the purchase or the offer letter, if it ever gets brought up, Scott, most of the time, like 9 times out of 10, they're not even asking, are you going to assign it? And it says right in our contract that we're going to assign it. But if that ever gets brought up, there's a few word tracks that you can easily deflect it or overcome it. We have financial partners in all the markets that we do deals in. And so the way I say it is we use private and hard money on every single transaction. So once we get pictures of the property, we're actually going to have some of our financial partners come out and walk the home. And they're going to, take a quick walk around the house, walk in the house, just to make sure it is what you said it is before they even fund us on the deal. So I keep it super simple.
Yeah, and super simple works, right? When you start getting more than super simple, you start saying things, and this is where confidence is lost or built. Less is more. Yeah. State the facts. The facts are we have financial partners that will walk through the house at some point, period. You don't need to disclose anything more than that. You don't need to say anything more than that. You're saying enough there versus when the silence, traditionally from sales, the silence kills somebody. Whoever speaks first almost kind of loses, and you want to not be that person in the wholesaling art of the game. Okay.
But it's the truth. Like,
yes.
I am partners with all the people buying my deal.
Right.
Because I'm really good at what I do. I can generate leads and I can get contracts at deeply discounted. And they don't know how to do that. So in my head, I'm their marketing machine.
And I agree with that, by the way, just so you understand. I buy from wholesalers. I just closed on a house last Friday that I bought from a wholesaler. I could have spent the last 4 months trying to find that lead and get it under contract and buy it. I just don't have the time. So I go to wholesalers like yourself and say, bring me your deals that fit this criteria, because that's the houses I want to flip. And so I'm bought the house. I'm flipping the house. I'm going to put it back on the market July 18th. and hopefully we'll make a very decent amount of money. And so I as I've gotten busier in the world, depend on marketing lead gen folks like Eric Cline to bring me leads, because that's what's great for me. That's how it works. I don't have the office that you have. So thank you for that. I think that's a phenomenal thing. Walk me through, if you can, kind of your infrastructure now. So you moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. You and Tony are partners. How many people are in your office? I know that your wife's part of the business. She handles the lead. Give us a little bit of where you've gone and where you're going.
Yep. Perfect. Awesome. So I made the conscious decision, the very first phone call that I ever made, I wasn't going to hire a single person until I was able to do $100,000 in a single month by myself.
So
100 grand.
I just want to stop everyone for 1 minute, because he doesn't mean selling a house for 100 grand. What Eric Cline means, just so everyone understands, is Eric, as a wholesaler, wants to earn, based on assignment fees, $100,000. So if he buys a house from a seller for $50,000 and he sells it to a wholesaler, he sells it to another buyer, another developer, investor, whatever you want to call it, for 100 grand, he's only earned $50,000 at that point. He still has 50,000 to go. So Eric only will make the money. He's only talking about assignment fees to his company. Thank you.
Yep. And so I said, until I can produce that on my own, I didn't want to hire anybody. And there's a reason why. I look at each one of my cubicles as an ATM machine. So, I should be able to spit out so much money out of each one of my cubicles. So it actually took me 4 months, Scott. On my 4th month, I funded and closed on $100,000. And I was like, all right, cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, because I was tracking all of my KPIs, which are key performance indicators. What do I look at as at this time, a solopreneur that wanted to become an entrepreneur and really build a team? So I went back and I looked at my talk time, my offers I was making in a single day, and how many leads I was dialing. So this is the numbers that I built my team off of, and we've had the success that we are having today. Is we do a minimum, and for all the listeners, write this down, because this is super, super important. Every single day, all of my closers, they dial between 60 to 70 outbound phone numbers a day.
60 to 70.
They get 60 to 70 outbound dials a day. And what is an outbound dial to me, Scott? They dial a number and they let it ring at least 3 times. That is an outbound dial to me.
Okay.
And then of those dials, they're going to accumulate 3.5 to 4 hours of talk time speaking to homeowners. And then in that 3.5 to 4 hours of talk time, they're going to make 3 to 5 offers on property.
So Eric, I want to just back you up for 1 minute. They're going to make 60 to 70 phone calls a day. Every day that they sit in their cube, the ATM cube producer is calling 60 to 70 leads. They're going to an outbound call is at least 3 rings, and they're going to make in 3 to 4 hours of talk time, meaning they're going to speak of those 60 or 70 calls. They're going to do 3 to 4 hours of discussion, and they're going to make 3 to 5 offers every single day.
Yep.
Okay.
And why do I live and die by those? You're not going to get a contract unless you're making contact. There's no other way to do it. This is a fucking numbers game. Whether you want to believe it or not, you gotta pound the phone. You're not going to get a seller to sign a contract unless they like you, trust you, and want to do business with you. How do you get that? Through quality conversations. That's where the talk time's going to come in. And then the offer, 3 to 5 offers, there's just no way humanly possible someone could ever say yes without making an actual offer on a property. So those 3 things I live and die by. Those numbers are the non-negotiables for me. Anyone that comes into my team, they have to, bare minimum, they have to hit those KPIs or they can't be on the squad.
So walk me through your on the squad. Who's your top performer? Don't tell me the name, but what are they producing?
Last month, he did $198,000 in assignment fees, and he made, I think, he was right at $20,000 for the month.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a remarkable. And how new or old is he to the team?
Been with us for 4 months.
4 months, closed $198,000 in assignment fees, 0 real estate experience prior to meeting you.
Yeah, and that was just last month.
Wow.
Like he has this month alone, I think he's at like 120 or 130 right now. So now his pipeline's built up. He's got deals that are starting to close and fund. So, I mean, he's on track to probably do $200,000 his first 12 months with us. And
wow.
He's 51 years old, and he's going to make the most money he's ever made in his life working there.
God bless him. That's a great story, and hopefully the young bucks that are sitting behind him are saying, "Hey, how can this guy do it?" What attribute, what characteristic does he have? What does he possess that you see as comparison to your other callers or closers that makes him stand out? Why is he having such success? And because I always do this. You know, when you run a restaurant, or if you run a restaurant, you've got one waiter that's making the most amount of tips and selling the most amount of food, and you have another waiter who's at the same place doing selling the same food, who's a third of it. And I always wonder, well, what are you doing? What's the difference? What are you noticing is the biggest difference between the 51-year-old and the rest of the team?
So one, not that whether this means something or not, I mean, he's got a little bit more life experience, right?
Sure.
He's had some opportunities, and he knows what hard work is. And he's bought into my sales process. 2, he understands the KPIs mean something. And then 3, he doesn't let the rejection get to him. He knows you got to get through a shit ton of no's to get a yes. Like at the end of the day, you can take work ethic, you can take skill set, and you can combine those two to help manipulate the numbers. But it is a numbers game when you really look at it.
For sure, it's a numbers game, and that never changes, right? I mean, I always tell people I would make 100 offers to get 3 or 5 deals a month. That's all I do. I would have I'd be rocking around. People would reject me. I got thrown out of more houses than I did in college from getting thrown out of college parties or whatever it was. I mean, it was easy to get thrown out of a house. You want to pay me $35,000 for my house that's worth 100? Yes, ma'am. There's the door, and I didn't get to do it over the phone. So these guys are getting hung up on. I got the proverbial door slammed in my face. But okay, so pretty amazing.
You asked, what does my team look like?
Yes, I want to talk about the team, and I want to also talk to you about rejection, because I think that's one of the hardest things for people to face is the rejection piece of it. So let's talk about your team. Give us a breakdown. So Eric wasn't going to hire anyone until he made $100,000 in assignment fees. He's made $100,000. Where are we today? Where is the state of the union over at TLC?
Yep. So I have 5 full-time closers. We have a sales manager. I have a in-house lead manager. The lead manager goes through all the older data, tries to get them warmed up again to get on the phone with the closer. I have 3 disposition managers that are all in-house. Once a deal is locked up, the dispo department finds a buyer for them.
Okay.
We have a full-time transaction coordinator. She is the one that's lining up all the pictures, getting the buyers out to the properties, holding the seller's hand from contract to close, giving them a weekly update. I have a full-time closing coordinator that deals with the titling companies, title issues, all that stuff. And then I have a operations manager. So I believe, and then myself, Tony, and my wife. So I think we have like 15, 16 people in my office now today.
Wow. Well, I think, watching which I thoroughly enjoy. I enjoy watching the Instagram where you're showing the contract and you're showing it live on the phone, where you're taking a contract and you're clicking the DocuSign and they're clicking the button and you get a contract, and that's when you make your money. Obviously, you make your money when you buy the house. You're making your money. You actually receive the money at the end of it, but you make your money on the buy. And so congratulations on the team. Where are you seeing them from a longevity standpoint on the closers, the people that are doing the buying? Are they, do you see the 51-year-old, do you see him staying for a while? Do you see it being a burnout job? It's a tough job. There's no question about it. So what do you guys do to do that? Say that again?
It's an absolute grind.
Yep.
I'll say the team I have right now, Scott, it's taken me, so I'm about 26 months into this model. And I have went through probably 17 to 18 closers.
Wow.
I have, maybe even close to, maybe even 20 of them. But the group I have right now is they've bought into the system. They bought into my vision. They bought into the culture that we're creating here. And we got a really good group. One of my closers has been with me damn near since my first hire. She's been with me almost 2 years. I got another guy that's been with me for a year. A couple of them that are coming up on a year. So I think unless they, their numbers were to completely just flop, I think they're with me for the long haul. I really do.
That's amazing. Well, I think that's super, that's a testament to you, and obviously your wife and Tony, and to how you guys obviously take care of and compensate and build and train. And these closers come in to Eric, 51-year-old guy's never had real estate in his background, but if you have drive and success as a burning fire underneath you to make money in a pure capitalistic form, you can do it at TLC. That's amazing. So we're running out of time here, but I want to touch on two other things if we can just touch on them. So Tony and Eric, who are partners, Tony and Eric run TLC along with Eric's wife, have created a mastermind in Raleigh, North Carolina, which I was actually going to attend with my son, but we have a conflict due to dates. But that's happening this week, I believe, and this will be their first one. And these guys are high energy, really into deep dives into their to what would be a mastermind or a mentorship program. Can you just briefly touch on, what's going to go on this weekend, high level, and how would somebody who's listening saying, hey, I'd really like to, I love what Eric represents. I myself was either depressed or on drugs or had my hallucinogenic moment, and now I want to reinvent myself. How do I get to where I'm going? How do they get to you, Eric? Let me hear a little bit about that.
Yep. So the easiest way is going to be Instagram, obviously, to follow me. But the mastermind, I went to a lot of events, Scott, and I think each event you can pull something out of it if you have an open mind.
Yep.
Any event you go to, you should be able to grab information and go home with it. But I went to a lot of wholesaling events, and they give such a 30-foot view of how to do the model, but they don't give you the actual ingredients to the recipe. So you leave the people going home still scratching their head like, all right, they talked about leads, but fucking where do I get them? Or what leads do I pull? All right, they talked about locking a contract up, but how do I talk to them? So what we are doing is we are doing a 3-day deep dive into our entire business model. And I've had so many people reach out to me, and they're like, that are in this space because they know what I'm about to do. I'm giving it all away.
Okay.
I'm having them in my office while my office operates. I'm going to have my fucking deals on the board. I'm going to tell them where to pull leads, why to pull them. I'm giving them all my sales scripts. Like, I'm giving everything to these people for 3 days, showing them how to find buyers, where to find buyers, we're giving them all the scripts to talk to buyers. So I had some other influencers that reached out and they're like, bro, why are you going to literally give them everything? And I said, because they need it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no one else. Like, I want to give it so much away where they don't have to go anywhere else and lose money to try to figure this. I have dummy-proofed this model. I have systematized this model from where you pull the lead all the way to how to get it to a closing table. We have it systematized. And wow. I want to just give that away.
Yeah, and I commend you for that. You know, the giving 80% of it, I think the reality behind it is if you or the people you coach from the sales side are not on the closing calls, you have the competitive advantage regardless. I always tell people that it's like, it doesn't matter. So, okay. So Eric, this week's obviously, by the time this is published, it'll happen. And it occurred already. Are you planning on doing another mastermind next fall, or?
I am going to do another one, Scott. I don't know when. I had zero intentions on holding masterminds.
Right.
Like, this was not my play.
Right.
But it's needed. There's enough people that said, "Hey, Eric, can you hold one of these?" And when your audience talks and asks, you got to listen to them.
For sure.
So I'm doing one. Will there be another one in the future? The answer is yes. I just don't know when.
Great. Well, I want to wish you tremendous success for all the people that get to attend. You said there's 40 attendees that will be at your mastermind event. I know that the hospitality will be incredibly high. You and your wife and your son and Tony are gracious individuals and stewards of the entire industry for us. I think you guys have been very kind to come to our events. I hope we'll see you again at the Hustle Harder event and whenever that date gets locked in. And I hope to see you out in North Carolina. I'd like to wrap up by if you could just give us how people can find Eric Cline, your Instagram, and how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way for us to do that?
Yep. So for Instagram, it's at the THE Eric ERIC and then Cline CLINE. I do have a blue check on my name. The only reason I say that is there's a lot of fake accounts out there on me, and there have been people that have been scammed out of money. So I don't offer any crypto advice, anything like that. I only offer sales training. That's all I offer training on. So just be cautious to all the listeners.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So if you find Eric, it's at the Eric Cline, CLINE, and he does possess a blue check mark. The reason for the blue check mark is to distinguish himself from the fraudulent accounts that are out there. Eric, I am incredibly grateful for our friendship and our time together. I am marveled at your success. Not that I didn't see it coming or did not see it warranted, but I know that you are a forever sales GOAT. I think you've done a phenomenal job adapting to this industry. I don't know if there's going to be another industry that'll come forward to you at some point, but I'm grateful for the friendship. I'm grateful for the time I had with your kid. He's a phenomenal son. You're a phenomenal father to him, your wife and family. I wish you guys nothing but the best of life and success. He is a sponge for you. It's always interesting to watch him stare at you and learn and say, wow, this is exactly what a father is supposed to be to a son. And the relationship is very special to me. I look at my kid and share that too. So my name is Scott Lurie. You have joined the Hard Truths today. I am grateful for our time, Eric, and really appreciate all that you do for the community and for the wholesalers out there. Have a wonderful event, and I look forward to seeing you again in Milwaukee very soon.
Later,
Cheers.
brother.
Thank you.